Hi, and welcome to the Breakthrough Emotional Eating podcast. My name is Kristen Jones, and thank you so much for joining me today and for joining our whole Breakthrough Emotional Eating community. So, if you are listening on the podcast and you are not a member of the Breakthrough Emotional Eating community on Facebook, we go live every Wednesday. I record the podcast live in the group. If you're not a member of the group and emotional eating is your thing, then you want to be a part of the group. So www.facebook.com/groups/food breakthrough and come and be a part of an amazing community. We have a lot of fun, y'all. We talk about all sorts of things related to emotional eating, as well as related to weight loss, as well as related to pop culture. So we talk about all sorts of stuff here. So you want to come, it's fun. Today's topic is, for everyone out there, how many of you have, and I'm being very serious when I say this, how many of you have felt like your brain tells you things to do, like eat a cookie, or to not eat on your meal plan, or to eat something that you haven't written down, or just, eat a cake? How many of you have had that experience that you feel like your brain is telling you to do something that isn't serving your life, it isn't moving your life forward, yet you feel compelled to do it because your brain tells you to? So if you are somebody, if you're in the community and you have had that experience, I want you to write brain in the comments. If that is something that has happened to you, if you have felt like your brain tells you to do something and you just do it, and then it ends up sabotaging you and you feel so disappointed afterwards and you feel so angry and frustrated, and why do I do that? Well, today's podcast is going to shed some light on why we do that, why it happens, how it happens, and why we need to stop that from happening, and that you do, in fact, have all the power to make that stop and to stop that in its tracks and get yourself on the road to losing weight. So, in today's podcast, you're going to learn three things. You're going to learn why understanding your brain and how it works is absolutely 100% essential to losing weight. 100%. And why no one is talking about it. Why no one is talking about it. Second, you're going to learn how your brain actually works. How does your brain actually works when it comes to making decisions? And most people don't know this, and if they knew it, their lives would be considerably different, as well as the number on the scale. And then thirdly, I'm going to fill you in on ways that you can put yourself in the best possible position to use your brain to help you lose weight. Okay? Tall order, lots of promises there, but I promise you I will come through with them. All right. So, the first thing we want to talk about is, why do you need to even know how your brain works? Why do you need to know how your brain works in order to lose weight? Well, if we think about it, our brain absolutely makes all of our decisions. Okay. So our brain makes all of our decisions about the actions that we take. But there are a couple things that most people don't know. And so we're going to go over what most people don't know about how your brain works. In order for you to be able to have a say in the actions that you take, you must understand the process that your brain goes through and what it does in order to make decisions. And that could be decisions about what clothes am I going to wear today? Am I going to go to work? Am I going to eat that donut? What all those things, your brain goes through a process. And most people don't know that they have absolutely control of it, as well as the ability to override what your brain tells you to do. So I want to review. We talk about this. We've talked about this on past podcasts. That was a mouthful. Past podcasts, but I want to review. So in our lives, we all have circumstances, situations, scenarios, whatever you want to call it. I like to call them circumstances. We all have circumstances in our lives that happen outside of us. We have no control over those circumstances. What we have control over are the thoughts that we have about those circumstances. So we have control of the thoughts that we put in our heads. We also have control of the thoughts, and the thoughts that we put in our heads are what create our feelings. Okay, so nobody makes us feel anyway. It's what we think about what somebody else does. That's what makes us feel something. And we do not do actions. We don't do anything unless there's a feeling behind it. And those feelings drive our actions, and then our actions get us the results that we have, whether we like them or not. So we will get a result. And sometimes the result is something we want, and sometimes it is something we don't want. So if you have results in your life that you don't want, that you don't like, not about going back and changing your circumstance, not about changing your circumstance. It is about changing your thoughts about that circumstance because we get to control the thoughts that we have. Now, one thing, there's a number of important things I'm going to tell you. The first one that I think is super important that most people don't know is thoughts are optional. We don't, any thought that comes in your head, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to go along with it. A thought is optional. Okay. We don't have to have the thoughts that we have in our head. They pop in. Your brain will give you a thought. And the first thought you can think is, oh, okay, well, that's not very good. The second thought that you can have is, no, I don't believe that. That's not true. We always get an opportunity to override a thought. Most people don't know that. Your brain is always going to go to worst case scenario or to a negative thought first because your brain thinks it's preparing you for bad things. Like if you know something bad's going to happen, somehow you're going to be able to stop it. And so your brain will give you a thought. That's your brain's first thought. The first thought you have is your brain's. The second thought belongs to you. You get to decide whether you want to go along with that thought or whether you want to say, no, we don't think that anyway. We don't think that anyway. This absolutely is the key. And most people don't know this. If you don't like, I'm going to say it again, if you don't like the results that you have in your life, in any area of your life, you do not need to look to the circumstance to change. You need to look at your thoughts and how your thoughts need to change about the circumstance because circumstances we have nothing to do with. We cannot control them. We can't control other people. Oh my gosh, how we wish we could, but we cannot control other people. We can only control our thoughts about other people and what other people do, but we do not get to control other people. And so once you realize that you get to control your thoughts, your brain may tell you all sorts of crazy stuff, but you get to say, nope, that's not what I'm believing. You have, as a higher level human being, you get to control that. Okay. You get to make that decision. You get to control that. If your weight isn't where you want it to be, what are your thoughts about your weight and about yourself? And are those thoughts serving your life and getting you the results that you want? I'm going to repeat that again because I think that is super important. And this is a really important question for everyone, whether you're on the podcast, whether you're on the podcast listening, whether you're in the group. This is a day in and day out question. If your weight is not where you want it to be, what are your thoughts about your weight? And more importantly, what are your thoughts about yourself? And what are you making your weight mean about you as a person? Ooh, that's big. If it's not serving your life, why are you doing it? So I have a story, and I don't think I did. I don't think she'll mind me saying this because I love this, and we actually recorded it, and it was released to everybody about a week ago. You saw a little video clip of my amazing client Julie, who did a little interview with me. And Julie said something that I absolutely love. And I don't say it nearly as cute as Julie does because she has the most awesome accent in the world. I love it so much. But Julie told a story on, or not a story. She told a little anecdote on an interview that I did with her that was sent out in an email last week. I posted it in the group, so y'all might have seen it. But Julie said that one of the things that was most significant for her was to recognize this exact fact that her brain could tell her something and she didn't know before. She didn't know before coming into the breakthrough membership, the membership group. She didn't know that she could say no to her brain, that her brain could tell her something. And this is the best line ever when she said, my brain would tell me to go have a taco and I would go have a taco. She didn't think there was any option. And now, when her brain tells her to eat something, now she says, no, that's not what we're doing. Like, this is not time to eat. That's not on my meal plan. I'm not eating that. And that's significantly changed things. Julie, I know you're on this podcast and I know that you've already lost 32 pounds. So I want, if you're more than that right now, would you put that in the comments right now? If you're over and above losing 32 pounds, because I know that that's where you are right now. So at least the last time we spoke. So, I mean, Julie's doing amazing, but that was huge for her to recognize, like, I don't have to listen to my brain. I don't have to listen to my brain say, I want to have a taco. No, she can say no. She does. And she says no. And that's where she is right now. So it's really, really important that anyone listening to this knows you have the power and the control to override when your brain tells you to do something. Knowledge is power. So many people don't know this. And do you know why this is not talked about? It's because the diet industry doesn't want anyone talking about this. Because if people knew the importance of their brain and how much their brain impacted their ability to lose weight and keep it off, because this is powerful, y'all. I'm not kidding. This is big. And once you get this down, you don't have to do that back and forth yo yo, up and down, up and down. You don't have to do that. That's done. Once you get this stuff dialed in, you are good. You are good to go. And so, knowledge and learning about this is super powerful. And as I said before, your brain, and this is the other piece, and I don't want anyone to ever think that they have to be angry at their brain for doing this. But your brain is meant, as I said, your brain is meant to give worst case scenarios. It's meant to go to the negative first because your brain thinks that's going to protect you, and its only job is to keep you alive. And so it thinks, well, if I warn her that she shouldn't do that, that's not something she should do, and I warn her and I give her the worst case scenario, she'll be better prepared. And that's really, we don't have to buy into that. We can have that. We don't have to listen to it as if it's the gospel, as if it's truth. We don't like something that's said and our brain tells us something that's not going to serve our lives. We absolutely can say, no, that's not true. I don't believe that. That's not what we're doing. Just like Julie said to the tacos. So, all right. Number two, actually, I would love I'm going to pop over. You all know that I'm having these issues with Facebook. So I don't want to talk poorly about Facebook as I'm on the, on the podcast, but Facebook's not really liking me right now. So I'm going to make sure that I can see all my comments. And I know I have more comments than I wanted to. All right. Good deal. Okay. So, point number two that I want to make is I want to explain and remind everybody, because we've talked about this before, but there's a lot of new people in the group, and I really want to make sure, and there's a lot of new people who have maybe are just listening to the podcast for the first time. And so I really want to make sure that you know all this. So it's really, really important that and y'all, Julie's lost 33 pounds. It's up. She's lost even more since I last talked to her. So it's really important that everyone knows how your brain works, how your brain works. So one of the things that's really important is that, again, knowledge is power. So we have three parts of our brain. Now, I know it's really hard to kind of comprehend that your brain is actually kind of not a separate entity to you, but it has its own agenda. and you'll understand once I explain this. So there's three parts of our brain. We have our primal brain, we have our prefrontal cortex, and we have the limbic system. And we're going to be talking primarily about the primal brain and the prefrontal cortex because those two are the two parts of our brain that are most working when it comes to how it relates to food and decisions that we're making. So our primal brain is just that. It is our our oldest, quote unquote, our oldest brain or our most primitive brain, the brain that's been with us since we were born. And so the primal brain is like that of a child. And so even though we've gotten older, as we've gotten older, our prefrontal cortex has developed and has grown and has given us rational thought. It's one of the things that separates us from animals. And so the primal brain is very childlike and it is responsible for the fight or flight for your survival. So it's very necessary. We do not want to get rid of the primal brain. We don't want to think it's bad. It's absolutely necessary. It is in charge of our survival. It is in charge of the fight or flight. It also wants instant gratification. It really just wants you happy. And so the primal brain is the brain that will tell you, like it told Julie, you need to eat those tacos, or you need to have a brownie, or you need to eat those M&Ms, or you need to eat off your plan. That's the brain that does that. Because really in its heart, it just wants you happy. It wants you happy, it wants you content. Unfortunately, that part of our brain makes decisions for us about 90% of the time. Okay, so 90% of the time, our brain is working from the primal, I want to be happy right now. Okay. Then there's the other part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which makes decisions that are more long term. They are decisions like, I want to lose weight for a trip that's 3 months down the road. I have a project at work. I have to plan all of these things. I want to have a birthday party for somebody. So I need to make all these plans. Making plans ahead of time, long term planning, executive functioning, meaning like multitasking, all of that's done in your prefrontal cortex. And that part of your brain is the one that says, yeah, you know what? I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. I want to get healthy. I want to feel really good. And so it makes that decision. Well, your primal brain's on a totally different wavelength. It's wanting you happy. It's going to kind of be in opposition. Unfortunately, the prefrontal cortex only makes decisions about 10% of the time. So we've got the primal brain at 90%. We have the prefrontal cortex at like 10%. Ooh, that's pretty out of balance. We need to get them back to more 50-50. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we go about doing that. But it really is super important to make sure that we are doing that type of thing to kind of even things out. So, one of the ways that we can do that is by making decisions ahead of time. And this can apply to all aspects of our life, but it can also, it's most specifically makes a big impact on our weight loss. And so we need to be able to make decisions ahead of time because that when we make decisions ahead of time, it allows our brain some direction. It allows our brain to be able to have some path that it's going to follow, that it's going to follow it and it knows where it's going. And so decisions ahead of time are very important. So another story. So I and I know Gina will not mind this because I actually was rewatching an interview that we did a couple months ago. And so if y'all don't know, Gina is a client of mine. She's also a coach in the group. And when Gina and I first started working together, and Gina totally owns this, is that she would write down what she ate after she ate it. Okay. So she'd write down her stuff afterwards. Gina totally owns that she was not a very compliant client, and she wanted to do things her way. She just wasn't ready to move out of the diet mentality. Totally fine. But Gina has come around, and in the last, I'd say probably 2 or 3 months, Gina has decided that she is going to write her meals, write her plan down ahead of time, have her meals written down ahead of time. And y'all, we were just talking about this the other day. She is 10 pounds lighter now, because she is planning and following through on her plan And she has gotten her brain to a point where her brain now trusts her, and it's much easier for her to follow her plan. And she now is seeing the progress that she always wanted to see because she's making those decisions ahead of time. And this plays out in all aspects of your life. You're going to be much more effective when you are doing things that allows your brain to trust you, that you're going to make decisions and you're going to follow through on them. That's number two. So if you are a person in the group who is doing their meal plan, if you are if you are writing your meal plans down ahead of time, okay? I want you to write down, if you're writing them down and you're sticking to it, I want you to write down decisions. Just comment decisions if you are a person who is creating meal plans ahead of time and then actually following through on them. Decisions. All right, part three. How do we get that more 50-50? How do we train our brain to be able to make decisions that are going to be better for us in the long term as opposed to what I want right now? Because that's really what dieting comes down to. That's really what it's about. So how do we get that even how do we even that out? Well, we even that out by doing our meal plans. We even that out by giving our brain some direction, as I talked about with Gina. Having our brain have a plan, have a direction, and then we follow through on it, and our brain starts to trust us. And that prefrontal cortex becomes more powerful. The primal brains doesn't go away. It just isn't so dominant. It's not making all those decisions about, I want to eat this, 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 and this. It's actually doing what's going to be in our best interest. So it's really important, again, for long term your long-term weight loss as well as weight maintenance, we need to get our brain on board with we're going to make decisions ahead of time. We're going to give our brain direction because if our brain doesn't have a direction, it is like the primal. We always say the primal brain. Janelle and Debbie love this. The primal brain is like a toddler running around with a knife. It's going to do whatever it wants to do. It's going to be crazy. It's going to do all sorts of crazy things, and we need to rein it in, tone it down, and make sure that it is doing what is going to be in our best interest for the long term. And that is teaching our brain, teaching both parts of our brain, the primal brain and the prefrontal cortex, that they're going to be working at 50-50. And that's going to be just perfect for us. But we have to get ourselves there. So, how do we do that? Simplest way, start doing those meal plans. Start writing your meal plans down ahead of time and then following through. And when you're following through, you're in your mind, you're thinking, I'm following through on this because I am training my brain to become more powerful so that prefrontal cortex can make those long-term goals, those long-term plans, and we can set goals and we can reach goals. That's what's absolutely vital and necessary. We have to be doing that. That's it. I can't even stress enough how important that is. So if you are really struggling with those thoughts in your head of your brain telling you one thing and then going back and forth and it's telling me, there were so many great comments. So for anyone on the podcast, I posted in the group about what's the thing that your brain tells you that ends up sabotaging you. And I think we have up to like 150, 160 comments of people just saying these really poignant things about what their brain tells them to do, and that oftentimes they do it, very often they do it because they think they don't have a choice. After this podcast, you all know you have a choice. When your brain tells you something, you can say no. You can say no. You can decide that you're going to do something different. But that comes from writing your meal plan down, doing the deep work of really looking at how your brain works, how it operates, how we can even things out so we don't give into our primal brain. And again, will it happen? Sure, it'll happen. But if it happens less and less and less, you're going to see changes, more changes and more changes, not only in your weight, but in your ability to be able to manage your emotional eating and your life in general. So there you have it. So again, we've got to understand how our brain works. We've got to understand that we get to have a choice, that we have a choice in the thoughts that we have. We can think what we want to think. We do not have to go along with what our brain tells us. Okay. The first thing. And again, You now know how your brain works, and now you get to make that decision. And how can you make that decision and how can that help you? By doing that meal planning. Planning and following through. You say you're, and this goes for life in general. You say you're going to do something, follow through on it. Your brain will trust you. Your brain will start to realize she means what she says. Personal integrity, it's a huge thing. And it is a huge thing when it comes to weight loss as well. We've got to have personal integrity. We've got to have respect for ourselves. And that respect only comes when we truly love ourselves, because that's always what it gets back down to. Loving ourselves is always the most important thing. Okay, y'all, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast as well as in the breakthrough community. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate everyone in the group. I appreciate all the people who listen to the podcast as well. I'm going to try and pop back over and see if I can. Oh, good. We have had more. Okay, good, 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 good. Because again, not liking me. It is not wanting me to see comments, which I'm not happy about. Not happy about. All right. So, um, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you again for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate all of you who listen, who comment, who are active in the group. Thank you so much for being here. And again, we will have another podcast next week. And again, practice, practice, practice. Saying what you're going to do, making a plan, and following through. Your brain will thank you for it. And remember, you don't have to listen to your brain. You get to make your own decisions. First thought is always your brain's. The second thought is yours. And you don't have to go along with your brain. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And I will see you all next week.